Welcome back, viewers, to the Dragster Shop. Today I've already tore down a Turbo 350 short tail shaft transmission, two-wheel drive, for this 74 Camaro. This guy here, he runs it at the local drag strip when he can. So he was having problems with the transmission leaking real bad, drained back from the converter, and didn't really know anything about the transmission. It didn't seem like it was slipping in high gear from what he told me. And so yesterday I removed it from the car and disassembled it, and it has been rebuilt at least once in its life. I have no idea what year it is. I haven't looked to see. Anyway, yep. Found a few things wrong. The input shaft in play was like really extreme. It was way over 100 thousandths of in play on this input shaft. So had some lubrication issues inside the transmission. See, it didn't do it. It burned up the low and reverse frictions, and I think it was the forward. Not sure. No, maybe not. Maybe it was a direct. Yeah, it was a direct. And same thing was happening with the direct. If you look closely, you'll see burn marks on the plate, on all the friction steel plates, steels, whatever you want to call them. Some of them are worse than others, but probably a clearance issue. I don't know. I measured them before I disassembled drums and didn't really write it down because it doesn't matter because of what it's got to be when it goes back together. He had somebody put a shift kit in this transmission years ago. They did the old school method where you leave out this is another Turbo 350. This is actually the Turbo 350 that I'm putting in his car. Parts should be here today for it to finish it up, but a lot of old school techniques is they leave this spring out right here and then drill the holes bigger in the separator plate. But this is not an original separator plate. This is an aftermarket. There's a part number right there. I'm not sure who manufactured this Valvebody shift kit, if it's what you want to call it. Yeah, I haven't taken the valve body apart. As you can tell, the valves are still in, springs and everything. I'm getting ready to do that here shortly. Just got to make some room up here on the workbench. But anyway, just a quick video. I know YouTube hates quick videos. Anything under 10 minutes they seem to frown upon from other YouTubers' videos I've watched. So anyway, the only thing I got left to do on this old transmission is remove the reverse piston. Couldn't find my tool, which is very strange. So I had to make another one. And for some silly reason, I decided to make the tool and paint it, which I know is silly, but I did. So anyway, clean the corners off a little bit and get that piston out of there and set this stuff aside. Yeah, this transmission, that in shaft plate, that in play on the input shaft was really extreme, and it done some heat damage. And this transmission's been hot before, and whoever did the rebuild, when they put the pump in, they if you look at those really shiny places on the upper half of the case, now some of you might say that's normal, but then as you come down to the bottom half of the case, we'll try to film it here, hold on, you don't see them. See, they're all just aluminum finish, you know, not shiny at all. So that tells me that the pump is right there. The last time the pump was bolted, the two halves were bolted back together. It wasn't exactly true. So they had problems. That means they probably used the pump to case bolts to tighten the pump, to draw the pump down and to seat the pump with the bolts, and that's something you just don't do. There's several ways you can align these pump halves up. You can tell, let me put this thing up on the workbench here. You have your two pump halves, and then you have this O-ring right here. You have to remove your pump. Make sure you replace that O-ring. It's 350 transmissions. They do leak at the O-ring. Don't try to reuse it. And then you have your paper. Pump to case seal paper. Do not reuse that. But this is a piston. And you have a couple lip seals here on the piston itself. This is the retainer plate, spring retainer plate. And you see the little springs in there. So you remove these 5 bolts, and the two halves of the pump come apart. The piston spring retainer comes out. The piston can pop out, and you can, you know, when you put it back together, you put it back together in the opposite way you took it apart, and but when you bolt these two halves together, you got this half of the pump and then the front half. So you have to make sure that that thing is completely square, so that when you put it back down, before you torque it down to 15 or 18 inch foot-pounds, 18 foot-pounds, so that it'll slide right in here without a whole lot of effort. This pump, when I was taking it out of when I was removing it from the transmission case, gave me a lot of trouble yesterday. The puller didn't want to work, so wasn't very happy about that. It took me a while, but yeah, this transmission, it is a rebuilder. It can be rebuilt. The case is okay shape, but I don't know what it'll be used for. We'll see. I got other transmissions over on the bench over there. I don't know. A couple of cases here. One's a 4-wheel drive turbo 350. It was burned up as well. And then have a C10 2-wheel drive turbo 350 with a long tail shaft. Right there to the right is the obviously longer tail shaft. And then the short tail shaft right there. And then there is your 4-wheel drive tail shaft unit. So, not too sure. That case, the 4-wheel drive case, was in pretty good condition, which was surprisingly, judging by the way the direct clutches looked. They had gotten so hot that the steel plates had cone shaped. That's pretty hot. And this is the low reverse piston right here, out of that transmission as well, out of the 4-wheel drive transmission. But anyway, I got a valve body right here that's ready to go into a transmission. I just haven't got the transmission assembled yet to put that in. All this stuff's cleaned up, ready to go. Got a couple of more Turbo 350 valve bodies over here. And when you take these valve bodies out of a Turbo 350, the first thing you want to do is take you a little thin blade screwdriver or a strong pick, and I'll take you back over here to this other valve body that's still assembled and show you. Okay, for some reason I can't cut my light on, but alright, move the separator plate out of the way. But what you want to do is you want to make sure, like your kick down, passing gear, whatever, you want to make sure that, and you can just use your thumb. Okay, now you've got your other valves over here. Alright, you just want to put in there and make sure. It doesn't take very long to do this, but when you take it out of the transmission, whether you're going to do the rebuild yourself or you're going to put a shift kit in or whatever you're going to do, check these valves. Make sure that they are moving freely in the valve body. Okay, this one, see that one's even pumping fluid. Now the bushings that are back here, they hold little valves in them as well, and you've got 3 of them, 1, 2, 3. You push in on the bushing, hold the valve body upside down on your workbench, push in on the end of the bushing here. That releases pressure off the pin, and it should fall right out of the valve body, so you can remove the bushing and your valve and your springs. So I've already checked this one. All the valves in this valve body are, for the most part, are moving pretty freely. And that's your shift valve right there. You know that should be free. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these pins. Now I've seen a lot of the Turbo 350s. This valve right here, man, these things will get stuck. But then up here in this valve, this spring, the big spring between the valve and the bushing, that spring will break. Just depends on what, probably the stock spring or close to it. Transmission's being used for an application other than what it was intended for. Where this one here, I'm setting up as a manual automatic setup for the owner of this car. He just runs this car at the drag strip only. So I'm setting this one up as a manual auto. Probably gonna be a full manual transmission. He's actually ordered a shifter. Well, at least I think he's ordered a shifter. I haven't heard from him yet. He asked me which one to get. I told him, and he sent me a picture of one, and on Summit or Jegs' website, I'm not sure which it was. And I told him, yeah, that was the one I was talking about. The not the Hurst quarter stick, but the B&M Pro stick, I think they call it. That's a good shifter. So hopefully I'll have that here this week, because I do plan on having this transmission assembled this week and ready to go back in the car. I've still got to inspect the hard lines. But while I was under the car yesterday, I noticed something kind of odd. The rear end has shifted in this car. So this car does have some rust, but look past that and you'll see that the rear end, it's kind of hard to tell, but right back here at the quarter panel, you can see it, maybe not on camera, and with the rust right there, it's hard to see, but the rear end is actually back. The wheelbase on this side of the car right now is 109 inches. Okay, the car's supposed to be 108 inches. You gotta look up all that information. And how I noticed it was when I was unbolting the drive shaft from the pinion yoke on the rear end, I was, you know, the yoke just looks like it was way up against the passenger side of the drive shaft tunnel. And then I looked at this car's got the old school traction bars on it. And if you look right here, you can see how the traction bar snubber has moved inward on the leaf spring. It should be centered. It used to be centered. But it's moved. That one over there, that traction bar over there, has moved outward. So what has happened is the rear end has shifted in this car, and it's most likely due to, well, I don't want to put the cart before the horse here, but more than likely there's a center pin in the leaf springs. In the very center there's a pin that holds all the leaves together to form the leaf pack. A lot of times what will happen is those bolts will get old, rusty, and they'll break off. Once that center pin is gone, then the rear end can move forwards or backwards. And I have a feeling that that's what's happened to this car. So, anyway, now this side over here is a little more obvious. I can't stand back but so far, but you can look at it and see how tight it is between the tire and the quarter panel here in the front, and how wide it is back here. So the rear end has went this way. It was like that originally and went like that. That's the way it is now. So now we have all kinds of geometry misalignment. The U-joints are not lined up properly. The rear end housing is no longer centered in the car. So I've got a lot of things that I've got to figure out on this thing and get fixed, but I have to have the owner come by, discuss it with him, see what he wants to do. But then again, he might watch this video first. Who knows? Yeah, so he bought this car. It was an original 74 Camaro for the most part. He's done some things over the last 10, 15 years, I guess, since he's had the car, just to be able to go to the track. That's all he uses it for. And he doesn't get to go a lot. He's got a family, like so many people do, you know, so he's got kids growing up. So I did an earlier video. It was actually on this car where I showed how to install and use a remote starter solenoid. I made that dash last time it was here at the shop. Yeah. So, anyway. I've been trying to get him to let me put a frame under it, or at least connect the frame and repair some rusted frame in the back. You know, these Camaros, the 70s Camaros, the frame rails like to rot over top of the rear end area. And maybe do a you know, 6-point cage or something like that in it, but I don't know. He wants to, but he might also want to buy another car too. So we'll see. All right, guys. Well, I went from talking about transmissions to a car. Okay, so let's stop this video here. If you like the content about transmissions or drag cars, let me know in the comments below. And go ahead and, if you haven't done it already, click that subscribe button to my channel. Check out my other content. I've only been doing YouTube videos for a little over a year now, so, you know, I'm not really posting as often as I probably should. But anyway, click that subscribe button, like the video, share the video, leave a comment below. Tell me what you think. All right, guys. Thanks.